Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. Tonight's topic has to do with something I've been hearing about, which is that Charlie is in the process of preparing to flip against his mom and testify against her in an upcoming trial next month. So when I heard that and I was told it was coming from reliable sources, I did not necessarily believe that. In my 35 years of practicing law, seeing thousands and thousands of criminal cases, I would just say that my inkling is that Charlie's not ready to flip on his mom yet. I think his mom would have to be convicted. I think he would have to be fuming mad to go against Wendy and have that as his motivation. Because after all, his appeal is still pending. He would have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to have that being pursued through the Florida appellate court system. So I just think it's premature for him to want to flip against anybody, in particular his mom, who, from what I gather, is he's pretty much always sought her approval for everything he did throughout his life. So I think that's uh, probably highly unlikely. And so I don't have any inside track to that. So I'm just saying, based on my experience, I don't think that's going to happen. But what I can say is what I do have on my title here tonight is that if Charlie does decide to flip on Donna, there will not be a trial for Donna this coming next month. The reason being, there's that huge conflict of interest that I've been talking about and raising, and which I have said before also that it's not been properly addressed through the court, because the thing is, Donna does not knowingly and voluntarily and consciously understanding her rights, from what I gathered from that hearing, where she talked about she was waiving her rights to any conflict that her current counsel, Daniel Rashbaum, had between her representation and also the reputation Daniel Rashbaum had with her son, Charlie Adelson, who was previously convicted last fall of murder of Professor Dan Markel. So I just wanted to set the record straight that even if this was true, that he was in the process of turning state's evidence to be testifying against his mom to try to cut some kind of deal or hope for some kind of deal. And I just can tell you that from the American jurisprudence system, if you look at the American Bar Association rules of professional conduct or professional responsibility, we don't call it ethics in the attorney profession. We call it rules of professional responsibility, usually across the states. You would not be allowed to represent Donna if Charlie was in the position that he was going to basically rat out his mom and say that she was part of this murder plot as well. So that just could not happen. And so the likely follow-up question is, well, what about Alex Morris? He's there as well. And wouldn't he be in the clear, because he never represented Charlie? But I can tell you the way the legal profession looks at it, if you have a conflict, it pretty much cuts across the organization you work for or the team you work for. So if it's like a law firm, the law firm runs a conflicts check before they ever agree to have you as a client. And through that conflicts check, it's for all attorneys, not just the attorney that represented you in a previous matter for that firm. Same thing happens for any public defender office. Same thing would happen for any defense team, like you have with Daniel Rashbaum and Alex Morris. The knowledge and the conflict that Daniel Rashbaum has would be imputed to Alex Morris as well. So basically, she would be without a lawyer if Charlie flips. So the way the process would work in Florida would be that Charlie would be most likely going to submit a proffer through his counsel. It'd probably be something in writing. And based on what he says there, the state would be deciding whether to go ahead and entertain and listen to what he has to says in a videotaped hearing, sort of like what we saw with Luis Rivera when he first came in and spilled his guts about how he was involved in being part of the Hitman team, and that they did this for Wendy, known as Wendy Adelson, and that basically the folks that hired him wanted to get the kids back, which was for Wendy's sake, right? So in any case, this is not going to be something that's fixable if he does flip. It's a constitutional crisis of the highest magnitude of order that the court is not going to be able to substitute somebody in there right away. So it's really going to throw a huge wrench into this process if he does do that. And so the state, my prediction is that state, if he does decide to flip and tries to flip against mom, I would say that they probably wouldn't even want to use him as a witness against his mom, because they probably and hopefully would realize what I'm saying here as well tonight, that this is like a major appellate issue that would not survive any appellate review. So if, let's say, Rashbaum did represent her and then had Charlie testifying, and then he tried to cross-examine Charlie and discredit Charlie, who was his former client. I mean, it's so murky and ugly and just such a embarrassment for the legal profession if that would happen. So I think what would probably happen is Rashomon would have to recuse himself because, as I've said before, as soon as any one of his clients would say something like, "Hey, I want to testify against the other client who you have the conflict with," you can't even discuss it with him. You'd have to immediately cease and desist and backtrack and basically cut off further communication with that client and make efforts to withdraw. So that's what the standard is across the United States. I can say is a generic rule, and I know that's that would be the required course of conduct for the 4 states I'm licensed in. So in any case, therefore, you got sort of it's probably something you don't need anyway. I would say even if you got a brilliant confession of Charlie and he's willing to roll over on his mom and give specific details of how she was involved and stuff like that, I would say for the sake of getting this trial on and over with, uh, I wouldn't even entertain using Charlie as a witness for the state, and I would reconsider that though against Wendy, and so we can talk about that another day, but. Suffice it to say, Charlie's is not going to be testifying against his mother next month. So that's the bottom line of it. So I would say the other issue I want to talk about is the issue of attorneys in this case. We've had another attorney be listed as a witness for the state, and that's that James Stewart Lewis Jr., who goes by Jim Lewis. He was a former attorney for the actual hitman, the one that actually pulled the trigger that killed the Honorable Professor Daniel Markel. And what happened is we had him on wiretap talking to Katie McBanois, and he was basically telling her the Adelsons were being quiet, and he recommended her to be quiet as well, and that Sigfredo was being quiet, and they weren't talking to the police and not cooperating. So he said basically ignore what Detective Isom was doing was trying to get her to cooperate and whatnot. So we don't know exactly who her attorney was at that time, but she was definitely talking to Sigfredo's attorney. I know she also gave $15,000 cash to Sigfredo's other attorney that turned out to be a guy named Sam, and so she was having some close contacts with Sigfredo's attorney in the initial stages of this criminal proceeding of prosecuting the hitmen. And later now, of course, we have one Adelson convicted. That's Charlie Adelson, and now we have his mother, Donna Adelson, that's up in the firing chamber now for her subsequent arrest and conviction that happened right after uh, Charles was convicted of murdering Professor Dan Markel. So we have multiple other Adelsons to be followed up on. They need to roll them up and go ahead and get them in a lock and load position, be facing trial as well. So I think that we have a lot of momentum now. There's a lot of things that are looking really bad for the defense. I see also we had a notice of a deposition of Scott Radius. Scott Radius was a guy that apparently was the one that tipped off law enforcement that Charlie he's a friend of Charlie's. Excuse me. Also was I guess a nightclub owner, and that's probably how he got to know Charlie. And he's the one that also knew, I guess, through some contacts with Harvey and Donna, alerted the law enforcement of their plans to flee for Vietnam. So I think that's going to be a good witness as well for the state. And sure enough, they did catch Donna and Harvey in the act of trying to flee the country just days after Charlie was convicted of murder. So I think that the reason being we have this Jim Lewis testifying, as well as these other attorneys, Tara Kawas and this David Oscar Marcus, who was an attorney briefly for Charlie. And of course, we know Tara Kawas was the two-time attorney for Katie McBanois' 2 trials. So I think what the state's driving at is they're trying to show that as a follow-up to Georgia's question as to whether Charlie's attorneys had contacted any of the hitman's attorneys, which if you stop to think about it, what victim of a murder crime has their lawyer call the victim, the hitman's lawyer who's arrested and being charged with murder of your loved one? So that just doesn't happen unless there was a conspiracy that happened beforehand. If there was a co-principal type meeting of the minds and they all acted in concert to actually have Professor Markel murdered. So I think from my background, I would say that's most likely what they're driving at. I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's an aggressive move. I like to see that. And it's gonna really be something that I think is going to at least put a lot of shockwaves through the defense, because they're going to have a lot of stuff coming at them, and they're going to be trying to deflect it. And we'll see what the judge admits, but I think just putting him on there is really sort of rocking the world for the defense. And you got a lot of indicators here that show what Donna Adelson was doing behind the scenes, both before and after the murder, shows her direct involvement in this. And as I've said before, this is something that she will be convicted of. She should have been tried with her son Charlie many years ago, as well as the Wendy, and also her husband Harvey. So we probably have a high likelihood then also that Wendy will be arrested here before the end of the year, and hopefully Harvey will as well. And so I think there's going to be the great momentum that, especially once Donna's convicted, they're going to want to prevent any other Adelsons from fleeing the country. So I think everything's trending up in the right direction. And think about it, we got that multiple trials under their belt for the two key prosecutors' case, both Georgia Kappelman as well as Sarah Dugan. So I think their confidence is at all-time high. Confidence is very important as a trial attorney, and so now that they got these convictions under their belt, they came back and retried Katie, and did a much better job. I think bringing Sarah Dugan on the case has been a huge benefit for the prosecution. She's super talented and capable, and she could try this case on her own, I would say, based on what I've seen from her talents and capabilities, and she knows this case like inside and out. So I'm very confident this thing's gonna be moving down the tracks. So I thank also John for being here, helping set this up, keeping me on the up and up here, and not having me create any technical glitches with his outstanding equipment. So anyway, if there is any problems, yeah, as you have said before, it's always operator error, which is me. So thanks, John, for being here and helping out. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump in any questions you have. And if you do have questions, go ahead and post them with a queue. I see we're at the 8:21 mark. Also, some of you may have, I see questions you're asking, what time am I starting in your time zone? I'm sorry, accidentally sent out some kind of alert on Saturday night. And I took it down the next morning and corrected it for Sunday night. So I was not trying to have a live stream Saturday. I was just trying to work through some different gadgets that John had bought me. So anyway, here we have some questions already. So all right. New Jersey Beach Lovers asking, since Charlie was talking to Wendy on WhatsApp and Wendy said she didn't have it, isn't it good enough to charge her with perjury? And I think she said she didn't recall, and I don't think she directly said she didn't have it. But if she did have it and was using it properly that day, if they have proof that she was using it that day, I think all that kind of stuff can be rolled into a perjury charge, because there's so many things that she's committed perjury on, and she's trying to avoid detection of her involvement. And so, I mean, if you go through and just sort of like make a chart of everything that you know is absolute truth, and you look at how she testified to it, everything was evasive. Everything was trying to dodge and weave and avoid the giving a straight answer. She repeat a lot of the questions and sort of rephrase it or recouch it or throw a question back at Georgia, just trying to throw Georgia off her game. That's something that you see a lot in court. If you're experienced watching court proceedings, that witnesses do that to buy more time, to try to throw the questioner off their mindset to ask the questions, especially if they're asking questions off a script that can rattle attorneys that are following a script. So, in any event, Thunder Road Queen, you're asking, do you think they have a close eye on Wendy in the event she tries to flee after her mom's conviction? I do think that they have close tabs on Wendy, and I think that, excuse me, they're going to do everything they can to make sure she doesn't fly the coop like Donna tried to with Harvey. Yeah, I agree with you. It'll be good to see when she announces that there's more arrests coming after Donna's convicted. John and I were there when she had her post conviction uh, public press conference there with Jack Campbell there and all the key leaders of that office. So that's I think that's something that they realize that they can't let this thing go. Jack Campbell's not going to be known as a guy that was afraid to take on all the Adelsons. He's been known as the guy that brings the this Florida Adelson crime family down and gets them all convicted. So that's what I strongly believe, and I think we'll be seeing that more of that. And Wendy will be arrested by the end of the year. Julie Nielsen is asking why would an attorney say Wendy Adelson won't get indicted since she was used as a state witness? I can tell you, number one, there's a lot of folks on YouTube that pose as actual criminal expert lawyers, and they've never seen the inside of a criminal courtroom. Number one, so do you actually even know their real name? Do they actually have a real law office? Do they actually say they actually have experience? And so I would say that I know there's attorneys out there that do only civil work, but yet they pose as criminal experts, and they describe it. What will happen is if they actually have experience to say that. And some of the comments I've seen are just outright ludicrous, outrageous, and they actually are so far fetched and ridiculous it would actually backfire and actually hurt their clients. So anyway, I saw one where they're trying to tell what Daniel Rashbaum should do to help things better for Donna because of things he said on STS podcast one time. So anyway, it's just really ridiculous. And the other thing is keep in mind that there's also attorneys that could be working for the Adelsons as well. They could be hired solely for the purpose to get on YouTube and pose either as witness or their own content creators, and just to talk down about the case and that they don't have enough evidence to go after the Adelsons and whatnot. So I mean, those are all avenues of aggressive defense posturing and propaganda. So just keep that in mind. And have I would say have your filters on and be looking for stuff. And so and they also probably don't understand the fact that you can be prosecuted for perjury just because you're brought in as a state witness, even though you are given by statute, not by any kind of like deal your attorney cuts with the state prosecutor's office, but by statute, it confers an automatic right of immunity. And the immunity only extends though to actually what you say on the stand. So use immunity and also derivative use immunity. So if you admit to something that comes back as the state didn't know about it, they can't use that against you if it also led to follow-up investigation techniques to discover that information and confirm what you said on the witness stand. So it's not really applicable here in the situation with Wendy because Wendy really didn't implicate herself in any way, and in terms of like where she admits to doing it. What she did is she basically impeached herself and imploded herself and was a witness that burned up in flames on the witness stand because she could not even say a straight answer on the most simplest of things. And so anyway, that's why if you do have a material, um, if you have a material omission or concealment or complete absolute fabrication, and basically you're committing a fraud upon the court based on what you say, to get an actual perjury conviction, it does have to be material. But as I've said before, there's enough collective things here that are material enough that I believe that individually they were material enough as well, because you're trying to basically do a miscarriage of justice on a murder case, and you have a much higher range of punishment. I believe it's 30 years in Florida for perjury in a murder case. So if it's not a murder case, then of course the punishment range is much lesser than it is for the highest charged crime in any state, which is murder. So in any case, that's pretty much a nutshell what I can tell you on that. April the first is saying, why does Donna believe Rashomon was brilliant? Well, I think part of it is that you got confirmation bias. You don't really want to admit the fact that you he's like a son to her. Rashomon was saying she's like a mom to him and all that kind of stuff. So, and they have a 10-year relationship together, and they paid a lot of money. So part of it is you don't want to believe it. I can tell you, usually though, the first person that's blamed is the defense attorney if something doesn't turn out right, because especially if you've been promising a good outcome and you lose. So anyway, I just believe that they just want to have somebody that knows them and has a history with them rather than somebody that they got to start from scratch and they really won't trust. So anyway, it's really bizarre how to see that kind of case where one lawyer is representing two different co-defendants of a murder case. I think this is probably the first time you've seen that in Florida history, and might be one of the rare times even across the United States in any recent history as well. So that's how bizarre it is. I don't know any attorney I've ever practiced with which would do anything like this in the states I've been licensed and are licensed in. Okay, Deborah Neve is asking about whether Daniel Rashbaum could actually be able to testify in Donna's trial if Charlie does not testify against mom. Okay, so there's rules of professional responsibility, as I said, that are in essence the ethics rules for attorneys, and one of the rules does talk about how an attorney is not supposed to be a witness in a proceeding where he's also an advocate. So under no circumstances will Daniel Rashbaum in this case testify to anything having to do with Donna. So he's not going to testify that she really wasn't planning to leave the country and she was just going on their vacation. Whatever he'd want to say in Donna's defense, he's not going to be able to testify as a witness. And if he did want, if he had such critical and valuable information, what he would have to do is withdraw as a counsel, and then let her new counsel be aware of that information, and then he'll be called as a witness. So that's the way it would work in American court systems. Lolly 77. Yes, that's what I've said before. I think Charlie is going to the most likely chance he would flip is after mom's convicted and or mom dies in jail, and then he's stuck there in jail and Wendy's living her life. And well, I guess she's not in South Beach anymore, but assuming she's in the Austin, Texas area, yeah, that's going to probably light a fire under him where he's going to be like scorched earth and wanting to go against her. But I think it's going to take a little bit more time. So I just don't think it's going to happen that soon. And like I say, if it does happen that soon, it's going to derail the September trial date for Donna. Yeah, it wasn't LJ the cat trying to start up the channel. Okay, true crime wifey. This is a good question. Also, is the prosecution willing to spend 20,000 transport to and from South Dakota to get Charlie down there? Nothing in return. Well, the benefit of having Charlie there is it boxes him in to and would rattle the defense to coming up with some kind of strange, novel theory of how Wendy wasn't joined at the hip with Charlie on this. So Charlie there is as a bookend on both sides of whatever she's going to try to weasel out of. And so I would say that Charlie is most likely being brought there as a rebuttal witness. So he would not testify in the case in chief, as we call it, in trial courts, where the one side goes and the other side goes, then you have a rebuttal. So the main proceeding that you present your witnesses on is called the case in chief, whether you're prosecution or defense. So I would say that he's like I say, he's going to be a rebuttal witness. And I think it's money well spent because in case Donna tries to pull some kind of really strange theory, you got Charlie to get on the stand and basically have to replicate what he said to his mom. And can think about it because the data, if you recall, he said I think by August or September, he had told Donna about this alleged extortion racket, and he told her not to tell anyone else. So supposedly the only one that knew for 2 years about this bogus extortion plot, and one that they made on an installment payment was Donna. And so he was basically having the Tallahassee jury. He thought they could snooker them into believing that Donna would keep a secret like that, and not tell Harvey, and they wouldn't go to their lawyers, their arsenal of lawyers, and and whatnot, including the judge, the chief judge in Broward County area there, the Weinstein judge. So it's just so outrageous, and so I think it's money well spent. I don't know if it's going to be $20,000, but I think also Charlie's sitting there in Leon County Jail with his mom, and not in the same cell, but they're going to be in the same facility. I think that's that's gonna rattle both Donna as well. That the fact that Charlie could be called to testify against her. So there's only upside to bringing Charlie down as a witness, even if you don't use him. So I think you gotta play also the psychological operation standpoint as a trial attorney to intimidate your opposing counsel, and make them maybe go do some maneuvers that you're maybe making a head fake on, and they get suckered for it, and then they wind up having something blow up in their face. So I see that a lot for folks that don't really know how to think strategically in the trial setting. Ocean Girl 505 is asking, do I think Harvey will hire Roshbaum? I don't think so. That would ever be possible. When Roshbaum loses 2 Adelson cases in a row, but who knows? Who knows? Things are really strange in this case. This is the strangest true crime case I think you'll probably ever find across all levels, from the actions of the defendants to the actions of the lawyers to the actions of the state attorney's office. You take those combination of factors, and you really won't find anything I don't think as bizarre as this case. And it's surprisingly not getting enough traction like it should in the public domain. Lakeside Laura is saying, what suggests to you that Charlie may flip on Donna? It seems extremely unlikely, but I'm missing something. I just heard this through other sources that they were saying another channel was reporting this as something that was reported from inside knowledge, that Charlie was in the process of just basically throwing the towel of sorts, I guess, and wanting to flip on his mom. So I just don't believe it. I just said that I think Charlie's not there yet. It's going to take some more threats. It's going to take some more intimidation. I think his mom's going to have to basically be convicted or dead before he's willing to flip on Wendy. But I definitely think he's not going to flip on Donna just yet. Morph is asking, isn't Wendy protected from immunity? No, you do not have immunity to lie, and so she would be a good candidate for being charged with perjury, as well as the murder of Professor Markell. And they would have 3 trials already she's testified in to be able to charge her with perjury in all 3. All right, Carla York is saying, is there laws in Texas that protect us against lawsuits because Wendy's leaving to Texas? No, I think the Adelsons are pretty much judgment proof. I think they've had enough of their money, all their money put into trust, and the trust would prevent them from having civil lawsuit collections against them. Law and Lit is asking, can Jim Lewis claim that anything he was telling Katie on the wire was privileged info, or read Sigfredo's case? Well, that's one of the issues that they'll try to raise from the defense, that this was privileged attorney-client, blah blah blah. But technically, he was the lawyer for Katie, not for Katie, but for Sigfredo. So him talking to Katie is outside the attorney-client privilege purview. So if you make a statement to your client in the presence of a third party, or even if it's not in the presence of a third party, assuming your client, that's considered a waiver of privilege. So I'm sure defense is going to try to throw some legal roadblocks to this. But like I say, I think it's definitely worth pursuing. It's a really nice aggressive move by the state to do that. Okay, Janie Garnett saying, I understand when he has a very good lawyer, do you think he will get her acquitted if she is convicted? No, I don't. It doesn't matter who she has as a lawyer because there's so many data points of indicators that show that she was involved in this. And I mean, it's overwhelming if you really stop and think about her actions and study them. If you present that in detail, like they did against Charlie in his trial, all the details of uh, the text messages or the emails, and those kind of things are really damning. In Wendy's case, you have many more individual nuggets of information. Some are very critical to show, others not so much. But you take the collective mass of those, and then really create a pixelized picture that shows her involvement. So, what's really hard to do is for a lawyer to try to target so many individual pieces of evidence that in real world you don't have that many coincidences. So trying to say one or two things is a coincidence is something an attorney can work with, but when you have like a couple hundred coincidences, those are not coincidences. Those are absolute concrete. They're actually evidence of guilt and a consciousness of guilt as well. So Mel von Monkers is saying you're curious as to why the state didn't call Katie's Sigfredo's lawyers to testify in Charlie Adelson's trial. Why only Donna's trial? The money link. Yeah, I think maybe Donna was, a conduit. Maybe she was offering to pay their attorney's fees. Where did Katie come up with the $15,000? That was probably, through Charlie, or maybe Donna or something like that. And think about it, just because maybe Donna wasn't the one handing the money to Katie. She did write the checks. Uh, we don't know exactly how Katie got the checks to cash, and we do know that Katie cashed them. So I think there's definitely involvement there that they can flush out of Donna doing more stuff to help facilitate the um, the uh, the payment for the murder to the hitman team. All right, Julia Nielsen's asked what would be the payoff of Charlie flipping. Well, if he's really going to just completely come clean on what was going on, obviously he's going to implicate his mom, his sister, and his dad. So I think that he would be hoping to get something less than what he's currently has for a sentence of life without parole. So there'd be no guarantee in the Florida system that he could negotiate anything of what his sentence would be if he comes clean. So he really should have done that before trial. So after the trial, he'd have to be really testify against both all three of those individuals to really have any significant chance of getting a reduction in his sentence from what I've seen in states that have systems like the Florida system as well as the federal system for cooperating in other cases and providing substantial assistance. Yes, I agree. The wheels of justice are moving a lot faster, and that's good to see. Very good to see. Yeah, Wesley, John Holmes. I think there could be a money angle as well, and so we'll see. But I think also the like I said, the communication could be a part of it. If the Adelsons offer to pay money for the defense, why would they pay money? Why would they tell uh, the hitman's lawyers to hush up because they're hushing up as well? So I mean that's something that mobsters and gangsters do, and drug dealers, that kind of stuff, organized criminals. So that's exactly what they were down there. Sir Tedrick Walker is asking, do I think Sigfredo gave permission for his attorney to reveal attorney-client privilege? That's a possibility. We don't know. I think there's a lot of nuances of this, a lot of technical issues involving the law that would be played out. But I think just putting them on notice and then sorting that out later is really something that is rattling the defense right now. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about whether Wendy would leave the country or not without her boys. That's not really something. I'm trying to talk about it more, this case, from like a lawyer to lawyer standpoint on what it takes to get these Florida Adelsons convicted, as they should have been many years ago. Frenchy Connection is asking, is there ever any evidence that the prosecution does not have to be shared with the defense? So I can tell you if there's any kind of selective things that the prosecution is deciding, well, do we need to give this to the defense or not? As soon as you don't give the defense everything, you have a slippery slope where you could get the case dismissed or thrown out, just like the Alec Baldwin case. So that was something I understand is under appeal now. The state appellate attorneys are trying to say that the judge was abusing her discretion when she dismissed the case against Alec Baldwin. So, but in any event, you want to make sure you give any information, whether it's exculpatory or not, because as soon as you start keeping out certain pages or certain digital files and stuff like that, you're going to make some mistake. There's going to be something critical, and it's going to wind up blown up in your face and wind up, creating reversible error. And so all that work and the conviction you got as a prosecutor is going to be all for naught. New York Patriot lady's asking, did Tamara ever make a comment as she observed the state of Wendy's house as she showed up to the rental house after Dan's death? Was Wendy Adelson all packed up? I don't think people really had much knowledge of what that status was and looked at it that way. So I can't answer that per se, but I think that there was it probably wasn't that obvious that she was packed up and ready to go. I don't think Wendy would have been that foolish. Kevin Whelan is asking, was there more than 2 trips? There possibly could have been a third. We're not totally sure on that. But there was supposedly some hitmen that were hired the summer before in 2013 that wound up taking supposedly $50,000 from Charlie and just taking off running, not even trying to do a hit. So Serendipity Smiles asking, do I think Alex Morris or Dan Rashbaum are going to do the opening statement for Donna? I really think it's going to be Rashbaum that does it. I think Donna's most comfortable with him, and I think you'll see more of the Alex Morris in the voir dire, and not so much the opening. I think he'll handle a number of witnesses that are not considered material. So I think Rashbaum will handle material witnesses. Yeah, there's some Adelson trolls out there that are you can hire folks to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's definitely more of an activity. They seem to do it more at the beginning of the month too, if you notice their trends. Okay, Lee Dundee is asking, if Donna decides to testify, what strategy should the state use in questioning her to not potentially come across as bullying an old lady? Yeah, I don't know if I want to talk about that one, because I think that I don't want to help prep Rashbaum if he's looking at this, and so I do think Rashbaum does look at our channel, because there's different things he's done in court, including like the puzzle pieces that John put together with me like a year and a half ago. That so he used the word puzzle piece. I mean, that could have been coincidence, but there's other things he's done that lead me to believe that he does follow the channel, and also Survivor when I was there for getting clues, and I'm sure he looks at other channels as well. But I would suspect he's only looking at channels that actually have true criminal defense lawyers talking about the case, or a prosecutor. Sir Tedrick Walker, I agree. Plenty of evidence to prosecute the remaining Adelsons. Lisa H4, yes, I believe Katie is not fully coming forward on what she knows. I think she's still conflicted in her mind between coming fully clean and also trying to not tick off Sigfredo. So they're never going to see each other again, most likely. So Don't know why she doesn't have that sunk in yet. But someday she'll regret not coming cleaner more because she would be able to reduce her time. And as we've said before, it's like that's the worst case scenario I've ever seen in lawyering, whereas someone facing the worst charge possible, murder, and you have three lawyers and you have 11-1 vote to convict, and you decide to roll the dice and go to the subsequent trial after a mistrial is declared, and you think you're going to skate that time when you're given a get out of jail card. So she would have been better off not having any lawyers. And I mean, the outcome couldn't if she just negotiated on her own, she probably would have been better. So anyway, just it's a terrible case of lawyering. I can't think of anything that in all my years I've seen such terrible lawyering. Okay, Matilda, too, you're asking, will we know who the defense will call as witness for trial? Yeah, they have a deadline for their witness list. Prosecuting defense will also have to submit them the same day, if I recall correctly. So that's coming up here in the near future. And do I think Donna will be the only one? You know, Rashmon's going to put a bunch of people on there. He'll put a bunch of states' witnesses on there as well, just to try to do like a psyop kind of maneuver against the prosecution. And so, in the end, I don't think he really has a whole lot of witnesses to testify about much to do about anything. And so, because there's a lot of doors they could open up and have it backfire. And I would once I see that witness list, I can if we can figure out who they are and what relevance they have, you know, I could maybe say what would be right for really helping them be flipped against Donna. So that's something that lesser experienced trial attorneys will do. They'll put somebody on a witness list, and then they never follow back with a witness, and then the other sides talk to them, and then they actually get the witness to completely reverse their opinions and viewpoints on the defendant. And what happens is then they're called by the defense, and then the witness actually completely torpedoes the defense case. So because the defense attorney didn't follow back up. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do to strategize as a lawyer. And as I've said many times, a lot of cases are won and lost based on the preparation and zeal and zealous advocacy that the attorney does or doesn't have. So Swiftar JFK, you're asking if Sarah Dugan's going to be the lead against Donna, then Georgia will be the lead against Wayne. No, I don't. I think Georgia wants to keep the lead on all these cases, so I just don't see her handing the reins over. Ultimately, it's up to Jack Campbell. But I think they're just going to keep that same system in place. The Georgia Sarah team, and they've done an excellent job. So I don't see that dynamic duo changing anytime soon. Debbie, you're saying that in the first phone call after Charlie's arrest, Don tells Charlie they aren't done with his family yet. I remember something along those lines as well. So yeah, they definitely should be worried about more Adelsons being arrested. I agree with that. So they're definitely have a lot less comfortable sleep, I would say, talking about Harvey and Wendy. They could have FBI showing up any day and kicking in their door and arresting them with a search warrant. Okay, Cessna 101, you're asking about, will Wendy's derivative use immunity prevent Georgia or Sarah from bringing up the topics such as Hitman TV and driving to Trescott an hour or so after the murder? I'm a bit confused. Okay, well, first of all, everything that Wendy said that was before she was called to subpoena as a witness, that's already openly usable by the prosecution. Okay, that does not apply to any of her immunity that's conferred by the statute. So anything she said to Detective Ice on that day, either at the restaurant, in the car, at the police station, all those 5+ hours, all that is directly usable against Wendy, and they should use it against her. There's a lot of gold nuggets in there. And a jury just looking at that would definitely believe she was involved. And so the fact that she mentions that she drove by the crime scene, the fact that she mentions the Hitman TV's so-called jokes that Charlie talked about. So that's something she'd already said. So that's not something that was usable from her court testimony because it was already disclosed outside of court beforehand. So that's really a wash, and it's not an issue. Joy, Matt, yeah, I don't know if Harvey's moving as well. I suspect he would be, but I haven't heard any intel on that at all. Maria, you're asking how long do you think Donna's trial will last, and if I want to come to the trial, do I call the court the night before to get a number to get in the courtroom for the next morning? The we don't have a ruling yet that I've seen that indicates which courtroom they'll use. I do believe the judge Everett will allow the larger courtroom that they had Charlie's trial in to actually be the one that they tried Donna in as well. I mean, I think that would make the most sense, and I think it also is it really I think something that Donna's maybe freaking out about because she's thinking I want to go in that courtroom. That's the one that Charlie got convicted in, right? So I think that I think they probably think that that knowing the way Donna thinks, she probably thinks that courtroom's cursed against Adelson. So so when she loses that and has to go to that courtroom, um, I think that'll be a good thing. So I think that there's not going to be an overflow where you have to worry about calling in and trying to get a number or anything like that. I think it's first come first serve to show up sooner the better. And think about it, if it's anything like Charlie when he testified, it was so ridiculous that the courtroom cleared out. People got so nauseated listening to him spew out all those lies and nonstop pat on the backs and laughing and basically mocking the decorum of the courtroom. So if Donna does something like that, you might see some clearing out of the courtroom as well. But I think she's going to have a completely different attitude and demeanor once she's cross-examined from what she does on direct. Quasimodo saying, I watched a YouTuber said no way when it would be arrested. I wrote in the chat how many times she lied, and he said, what proof do you have of that? I knew he must have been paid by the Adelsons. Yeah, so I mean, these guys are just hired guns for the defense. If you look at one of the guys, he's an attorney, never's done a criminal case according to his website. He's an attorney, but he's never done a criminal case. And suddenly he starts covering the Adelson case right when Jeff Lacasse is testifying, and he's trying to take pop shots at Jeff Lacasse. So anyway, those are kind of indicators these guys are hired guns for the Adelsons. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, Robin McBroom is saying Rashbaum was really brilliant at making Donna Adelson feel like they'd get off scot free. Yeah, I mean it's really I've said that Rashbaum has had huge dividends for the state. Keep in mind he's the one that's telling Charlie there's no need to flee the country, that he's going to get a fair shake up in Tallahassee, and he'll get him acquitted if you listen to what Charlie's basically saying and reading between the lines. And then he also had discussions with Donna, and those discussions led to her to flee the country a few days after Charlie's conviction. So really, he's had a really beneficial part to benefit Justice Markell's by making sure Charlie didn't flee the country to escape the arrest and conviction. And also Donna then did try to flee the country based on her talking to Rashbaum. So both those played out really good. And so it's we should be grateful for those conversations. Yeah, Kevin Whelan, I think we've already talked about that. Yeah, there's at least 2 trips we know of, but, there could have been another one. I believe that, Luis Rivera maybe wasn't quite clear. Maybe Sigfredo went up there by himself or whatnot, but there probably was a 3rd one that actually went up there staking out the place. We just don't have enough details on that. Secretary Walker's asking if I've seen Donna's calendar notes and evidence. I've heard summaries of that. I know there's some. There wasn't good pictures of those up until a couple days ago, from my understand. But I didn't really want to sit there and go through that just yet, and because I had a busy weekend. But I can say that from what I'm gathering from reliable sources, that there really isn't a whole lot there. It just sort of looks like, um, it's just some really strange thinking for Donna. So yes, Ronnie Donna's second attorney is Alex Morris, and he's a local Tallahassee criminal defense attorney. All right, let's see here. I need to jump ahead. We're at 9 o'clock. All right, so I'm 30 minutes behind. Let me start speeding ahead here. Roseanne, you're asking if they arrest Wendy or Harvey during or soon after Donna's trial. Any chance they will keep Charlie Luis Rivera sit in Leon County custody and hold them for the upcoming trials? No, because Luis Rivera, he's actually in federal custody serving out his sentence there before he has to be transferred to state once he fulfills his federal sentence. And Charlie, he's going to go back to South Dakota if they'll take him once he's done and being a possible witness in Donna's trial. So he'll go back to South Dakota. So no, they're not going to keep him there, and it's going to probably take a year and a half or two to get Wendy and Harvey to trial. So no, they're not going to keep him in Leon County Jail. Definitely not, because Wendy would be there and also Harvey would be there. So it just doesn't work out that way. Charlie will only be in a jail and leave prison because he's being subpoenaed as a witness. That's the only reason he'd be doing that. Dreamscape, yes, you're asking about do I think Ruth will actually be an actual witness during Donna's trial? Will it happen? Ruth has a lot of contemporaneous information. I think the issue with the denial of visitation for Ruth and Phil Markel is such a huge issue. It's part and parcel and a large motive for exterminating Dan, because it was basically extermination of the entire family tree. So I would say that's one of the top 10 things to bring out in the trial against Donna, as well as Wendy and Harvey. So Thunder Road Queen, you're asking about if this case is so high profile, will it have a harder time selecting a jury or take longer? I don't think so. There's still a lot of Tallahassee folks that aren't quite as familiar with the case. So I think they'll be able to go through enough people the first couple days. I think what they have 900 the first they were supposed to show up the first day, and they got through and with maybe 140. So you might have to go through maybe double that number, but you're not going to have to use 900 or anything close to that for my beliefs on that. PLD, I've already mentioned why Charlie's a witness. I think they want to box him in and be able to prevent him from doing something to prevent, I should say, Donna from doing something that goes completely a 180 and tries to distance herself from Charlie. So having Charlie there is going to basically freak out the fans from doing anything different than what Charlie had said at his own trial. And keep in mind that he had told the court that only Donna knew about this bogus extortion defense, which is really a robbery on an installment plan, which is the most outlandish, crazy story you'd ever hear in a criminal court. Okay, so Patriotic is actually asking about will I be posting daily updates during the trial? If so, I'd set my alarm. Thank you for John and me. Okay, I would say that this is something that John is going to actually be there to do a live stream. There's going to be a number of people live streaming it, and John's got the equipment now to actually do a direct hookup to the court. So we won't have to piggyback off of court TV or Law and Crime or any of those channels. So that's the game plan now. And then I'll basically do a minute by minute analysis on the trial, and so that's the current game plan. As you recall, I did that starting at day 2 of Charlie's trial, the second day of witnesses. So want to do it from the first witness this time in the opening statements. So that's what we got planned for right now. Joe Poe is asking, won't the prosecution's Wendy be harder if she doesn't take the stand? Is there evidence that depends on her testifying? Well, anytime a defendant gets on the stand, especially if you know they're guilty, it's always a good day for the prosecution. As we've seen here in these trials, anytime an Adelson testifies, good thing happens for justice for the Markell family. So I think the Adelsons think that they can talk their way out of anything. I think that she will take the stand. And even if she doesn't take the stand, she's made enough statements that it doesn't really matter whether she takes a stand or not, because you got her dead to rights, and she'll get convicted, no doubts. If you go after the right kind of detailed information, it's not that difficult case to get a conviction on. All right, it's very solid. If you look at the indicator list John and I come up with, I got a better list that I could actually cover over in the coming weeks. I think we've been working on that, and so more to follow on that on the indicators for Wendy. The Sarah Boone case starting October 7th. I'm not tracking that one, and so I'll take a look at that because I've heard that come up a number of times. So just don't know anything about it other than that name sounds familiar. Sherby's asking, do I think the Adelsons are orchestrating harassments or threats against the prosecution? No, I think they're just trying to intimidate him through public media, by trolls and stuff like that, trying to make the prosecution maybe look at those kind of comments and say, wow, there's reasonable doubt people out there. We got a really tough mountain to climb to get a conviction on these other Adelsons. So we probably don't want to embarrass ourselves through all this live coverage. So no, I don't think that I don't think they're doing anything to mess with the prosecution directly, but we'd never know if they were. Okay, D, you're asking some recent Florida murder convictions, no deal with prosecutors, sentences life with parole. Any reasons that might happen? Any chance in this case? If you're convicted of first degree murder, then it is life without parole. So if you're talking about life with parole, that would not be first degree murder. That would be like a second degree murder. That's the way it applies in most states. Angela King, no, we'll be following some other cases as well. The Brightingham case. I started covering that just one time, and there's more stuff going on that. So yeah, I plan to cover that one as well. Okay, I think I need to jump ahead here. The two, you're asking what role Katie's brother have during the trial as a witness. I think he's going to probably be another witness to show what the Adelsons are trying to do to pay for the hitman's defense. And so that's going to be extremely damning. And is going to be just making a real slam dunk win. The jury's not going to be out long to convict Donna. Lori's Thrive is asking, do you think Donna will turn on Wendy because Wendy pretty much cut them all off? I think she's going to be tempted to do that. I think she's going to have just nothing but seething anger towards Wendy. And the thing is, maybe she'll be in this position like Charlie, where she just says, "Forget. I'd rather make sure Wendy's convicted than and admit guilt than allow Wendy to live her life free." But then again, if she's worried about the boys, then she's not going to want to do that. So I don't think she's necessarily. I don't think she would do that. I think Charlie would be more likely to want to do that. And maybe if Charlie does, then maybe she'd do as well. But think about it. You're going to forfeit your chance of appeal at that point. So I think she'd rather probably go down dying as somebody trying to fight for her innocence claims and than actually flip on her own daughter. Excuse me. Vertus is asking if Rashomon withdraws, they still get paid. If you have a flat fee retainer agreement and you've done all this work and you're just a month from trial, you pretty much would have earned it all and would be able to justify it. So yeah, he would still get paid if he has to withdraw from the case. Grand Meta is 7 is saying it's hard to fathom how Wendy would put trust into two killers she never met to make sure the boys were in the daycare before killing. It just is too much. Your opinion? Well, I think that yeah, it's really. I mean, this whole murder plot was just so outrageously poorly planned, and just really relied, I think, more political top cover than anything to keep this thing dragged out for so long. And so, but they bet wrong, and they're paying the price now. And so I think that yeah, when you stop to think about it, that you're going to send up some career criminals to go up there and try to take out Professor Van Merkel, and you got the boys around there, and who's to say that they won't just go ahead and kill Dan in front of his boys? So it just shows how reckless they were in deciding to hire some career criminals. And the fact is they could have come after Wendy as well and robbed her. So I'm really surprised they didn't rob her. And once they got the information on where Dan lived, they could have easily figured out and got information from Wendy as well, and then just robbed her. So I think that I saw some YouTube channeler talking about this year and a half ago, saying this is a well-planned murder, and I was really shocked to hear that because as we've seen, it was completely a botched job, and it's just for the political top cover and some lack of drive by the prosecution. These people have been walking the streets for 10 plus years. So, okay, JC saying, I just realized that they didn't call Donna as a witness in Charlie's trial, wondering why they left her out and what strategy that was. I think because maybe they wanted to go ahead and they were planning on arresting her and just not to have to deal with any immunity issues. But she was listed a witness. As you recall, Judge Everett threatened to have her and Harvey arrested down in Miami area and brought up in shackles to Leon County if they did not cooperate with a Miramar deposition that's supposed to happen in an FBI office there. So I just think that they decided not to go after these other Adelsons as witnesses. But in any event, it wasn't necessary, and I did think it's good to show that you're willing to put some fear in the crime family by putting them on witness lists and whatnot. So part of psychological operation of a good prosecution. Marcel Abel, you're wondering how much Charlie has spent on his trial. I would say probably you're looking at least 1.5 million range is probably a good target point. Could have been a little bit less than that, but my guess is probably like 1.5 million. D, you're asking why do I think Donna is actually going to court rather than pleading in the face of overwhelming evidence. She may think she has a chance, but other reasons to support Charlie's bill. I've said this before that the richer the client, the less likely they're going to get candid information from their lawyer. So what happens in the criminal law arena when you're a criminal defense attorney and somebody comes to you and they say they're charged with a crime and they are innocent and they want you to fight for them and whatnot. And if they put a lot of money down, like so say if Charlie or Donna put $1 million down on the table, then defense attorneys is if he tells them a few months into the case, hey, it's looking really bad for you. You know what? Most lawyers would be fired at that point because that's not what the client wants to hear. So I think you got competing interests there that normally happens. So I'm not saying that directly is why Rashbaum is telling them they got a good chance of winning the case and all that. It's just so bizarre though to that these conversations that Charlie had with Donna were revealing that Charlie thought he's walking home because he scored a 95 on his testimony. I mean that's like that's so bizarre. I mean, I can't believe a defense lawyer to even ever have that conversation with a client. So is Charlie making it up, or is that really something that was said? I mean, it's just another layer of lunacy on this whole case. Julie Nielsen, you're asking, wouldn't it be illegal for defense attorneys to try to put pro Adelson PR comments on YouTube lives? No. Why would that be illegal? It's freedom of speech. Richard Christensen, you're asking, do you think Harvey will be at Donna's trial? I do think that Harvey is like not wanting to be there at all, and I think that that Donna's probably going to demand that he is sitting there behind her, and so that's going to be interesting for Harvey to sitting there with a whole gallery of folks that are all cheering on the prosecution, and he's going to be probably the only one in the whole room that is hoping for Donna to walk out of there when it's all said and done. Kelly Eastmead is asking, since Wendy is moving to Austin, does she and her attorney somehow believe she's not going to be indicted? No, I don't think there's definitely a true correlation there necessarily, but I think it may have to do with, the grandparents' rights visitation. I think that it's very dangerous there in Miami, Florida. That's where Latin Kings are. So I think her staying there is putting her at more risk of being having some kind of gang extort money out of her or threatening her or something like that due to Charlie being in prison. And so it's just something that I think there's a number of factors that were to her benefit in her mind to go ahead and try to quietly leave Florida and hopefully take the pressure cooker away from her. But I think Texas being such a more law and order state than Florida, that I think that's probably the worst place she could have gone if she thinks she wants to not be bothered by folks in the neighborhood and the public. So Thunder Road Queen, Charlie's listed as a state's witness, so we'll see if he's listed as a defense witness as well. Zach Sawyer is saying, who prepares Charlie for his testimony in his mother's trial since Rashbaum isn't representing anymore? Well, Rashbaum isn't technically representing anymore, but he's probably still talking to him is my guess. We don't know for sure, but I think also his appellate lawyer would probably be there. Some lawyers don't even show up for that kind of thing, which I think is really bizarre. But if you got a client that's testifying, even if they're a previous client and they got convicted or they're testifying in another case, even though technically you aren't on the case, I think to preserve the work you did for your client, I think it's probably a good idea to be there. So for Charlie actually having a lawyer there or not, I can't tell you who it would be, but my guess is Rashbaum would probably be talking about it and helping prepare him for the right questions and cross-examination, that kind of stuff. So don't know for sure, but definitely another bizarre situation given the conflict of interest we talked about. All right, let's see here. Donna Buchanan, you're asking, would they call Charlie as a defense witness? They can do that, and like I said, every time an Adelson testifies, you know, they really help prove the case for the state. So yeah, let them call him. Let them call him as a witness and tell that the most ridiculous story that you will ever find in a criminal courthouse. All right, let's see here. We got I'm jumping up to 8:48. If let's see here, Lisa Avellino's asking if Wendy's convicted, would the children go to grandparents, state custody, or perhaps elder brother? Would Wendy have a right to decide, or is it up to the court? It's going to be up to the state system that handles child protective services type of thing. I don't know what they call it in Florida off the top of my head, but it'd be that kind of process where the state normally they look for a family member. In this case, because of the Florida Adelsons are involved in the murder, it's not going to be like Harvey or something if Wendy gets arrested, let's say by herself. So I would say they're probably going to maybe reach out to the Markells, and but they're up in Canada, so not sure exactly how that would work. So it remains to be seen, but yeah, that's not really something that criminal law folks like myself get involved in. Okay, let's see. We have Vertice GSA asking, can they ask Katie's attorney where the money for the fees came from, or is that attorney-client privilege? Well, it'd be privileged, like the judge previously ruled. He looked at it in camera, but if Katie's willing to waive it, and that would be, and she's asking Katie to testify to that, or Sarah to, excuse me, to testify to that, then I would believe that that would be waived, and it would be definitely something that would be helpful, that could be argued to lessen the life without parole sentence for Katie by saying she even waived attorney-client privilege, and her attorney also confirmed that the money came from, let's say, Adelson's, but we don't know for sure if it came from Adelson. Suppose your sister defrauded like $1 million+ from some business she worked for. So we don't know for sure, but yeah, I think there might be a money angle there that they're pursuing, and as well as the ring of silence that the Adelsons try to force through the Hitman's Council. Mandy Strong is asking, do I think Donna's going to play stupid and all of a sudden lose her memory, aka acting? No, I think Donna wants to come out with guns a-blazing. I think she's going to want to come out and have a whole laundry list of details that that she's thinking that she's going to be able to have the jury get suckered into believing. So it's just not going to happen. She's definitely she's definitely not going to come across on the jury very well. She's going to come across absolutely terrible, and that helps convict guilty parties. When you don't have a likable personality, you come across in a really bad way like Donna does. It's just not. It doesn't turn out well. Donna Road Queen, you're asking if the defense calls Harvey. Yeah, I don't think they want to call him. I think Harvey wants to like duck and run as much as he can, and he's going to be terrified as someone being there on the witness list. And I think he's actually, if he's on the witness list, then he's not going to be able to sit in the courtroom until after he testifies. So I just don't think the defense is going to call him for that reason. What's he going to say other than some pack of lies that they're going to be easily attacked? Excuse me. YB, you're asking, do I think Donna will have a jury consultant from Miami? I do not, because I think they learned their lesson, at least that the New York jury consultants came down there and put on a circus show that was a complete complete waste of money. So I don't think they want to spend another $500,000 and to have somebody from Miami try to tell the lawyers who do try to strike off the jury from a culture in Tallahassee they have no clue on. Linda Mon, you're asking, can they call for a full disclosure on the Adelson's bank accounts? Well, there's, Charlie dealt with a lot of cash, so I don't think the actual bank accounts are going to say a whole lot. But keep in mind, they did present prosecution evidence in Charlie's trial that showed they had around the time of the murder, like roughly around $8 million plus collectively. So a lot of money we're talking about there. So. Mary Bartley, you're asking if Charlie would get a lighter sentence if he told on Wendy. Well, there's it depends how much information he gives that's substantially assisting the state in actually getting conviction against Donna. So if he testifies but she doesn't get a conviction, then he wouldn't get nothing to lessen his sentence. And if he does testify and is actually helpful, and the prosecution informs the court that he was helpful, then maybe he may get go from life without parole to maybe um, you know something like 120 years or something with parole. So remains to be seen. And I just think it's too premature for him to flip on anyone. Leslie Jacobs, just curious if a judge feels both the state and prosecution have missed subpoenaing an important witness, can the judge request this witness be subpoenaed to testify? No, the judge cannot request that. The judge is supposed to be a neutral arbiter. He's not supposed to aid the prosecution or the defense as being that neutral jurist. But what I have seen that is, judges a lot of times that haven't done defense work. They've only worked as a prosecutor, or they have a prosecution mindset. They basically help coach the prosecution on what they need to do. So they don't need to tell them to do it. They can maybe suggest something. And so that's improper conduct for a judge. So it all depends on what they're doing. But no, that's not something that should ever be done by the court. I've also seen a case where the I had a case, felony case in South Carolina, and I remember that the prosecution was 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 bringing out a lot of information. I had a lot of information that was going to pretty much blow up in their face, and the judge knew it. And so he was basically trying to talk the prosecution into dropping those charges before the other evidence went to the jury. So the prosecution didn't, and so I was able to bring out a lot of information that wound up doing exactly that, helping tie the whole case together and result in not guilty verdicts. So yeah, so judges do that. They try to help. They try to help the prosecution. Normally don't help the defense, but and we also saw that in some other cases here recently. But I won't go into that. You're asking why would Rashomon even consider putting Donna on the stand? Well, first of all, it's a client's choice. That's one of the constitutional choices a client has in a criminal setting in America, is whether you testify or not on the guilt innocence stage of this proceeding, and whether you want to testify in your sentencing. So ultimately, what you do have is the client lots of times defers to the lawyer. I can tell you in a murder case, usually a lawyer is going to tell the client you don't want to take the stand because there's such a higher scrutiny of you and anything you say, and especially if you got a lot of baggage that you can't explain, and somebody like Donna, is going to get convicted. So I don't think somebody like in Rashmon's position would be as inclined to try to talk her out of it if he knows he's going to get convicted anyway, because then the client's less likely to point the finger at the lawyer, and the lawyer can then, when the client's convicted, then blame the testimony of the client is the one that did them in. So that's why I think Donna will take the stand, and it's not going to matter though. It's going to basically help secure the conviction. But either way, she'll get convicted speedily. So no doubts in my mind. Debbie Martin's asking, would Wendy would have to drive by Tallahassee to get text. I wonder if she visited Donna. She could have claimed part of her counsel, right? Yeah, she could have said she was her lawyer, and they would have let her in there to see mom. But I suspect that's not happened and will never happen. And I think that's gonna really fire up mom. And so yeah, we'll see what happens. But like I say, it's the Adelsons are sort of imploding the closer it gets to trial. And once he gets arrested, you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff going on. And it's been long overdue. And they need to put the heat on these Adelsons in Florida. Lily Benjamin is asking, given my earlier remarks, would Katie have an appeal based on ineffective assistance of counsel, or was she duly informed and just made a bad decision? Yeah, I don't think it's the kind of stuff that you can directly say these lawyers, were ineffective per se if the client's saying that they didn't do it and they don't want to plead guilty. How much do you as their lawyer try to get your client to do the right thing and admit guilt and whatnot? So I just think that any lawyer worth their weight, when you got a guilty client and they're going to go down, you got to get them to see the light and do the right thing and try to become state's evidence, cut a better deal. So I think in this particular case, no, it's the ineffective assistance counsel isn't gonna get her case tossed at all on appeal. G Road, you're saying, why do you think Harvey wasn't arrested with Donna? He was right there leaving too. Yeah, I think that if you look at what they were doing, only the arrest warrant that they're cobbling together in a super fast fashion that day. She was picked up at the airport. They didn't have time to do both her and Harvey. So I think also that they never intended to do them both at the same time. I think they want to do this daisy chain approach one at a time, and they're sticking with that, even if they get a conviction with Donna. I think they're probably going to just default to going after Wendy next or Harvey next, but one at a time. It just really pains me to see that, but at least they're going after him, and at least they're going to get convictions. So yeah, Mandy Strong. I just said that the other day that you're saying here, Wendy didn't look like she was dressed for luncheon with her friends. It looks like she was dressed to find her ex-husband deceased in his garage. Yeah, I mean, that's something I would call those witnesses that she had routine lunches with, and ask them, ask them to describe how Wendy normally dressed, if she'd ever dressed like she was, you know, going to work in a garden or something like that. So I just think that that's another real suspicious indicator of guilty involvement. Yeah, just me. I would say if you look at Luis Rivera, he wore a prison garb. I think Charlie would have to wear the same. And so think about how that'll look to a jury. Charlie Adelson showing up in his prison jumpsuit or Leon County Jail jumpsuit. We'll definitely, that'll be a sight for the jury to see as well as us. Let's see here. Jumping ahead to 9 o'clock. Okay, so I'm 30 minutes behind still. So Ann Bradley, you're asking, can Wendy refuse to testify against her mom? Well, think about what happened with Charlie's trial, that his parents tried to refuse to testify, and the judge was ready to have him picked up in South Florida and be hauled back up in a paddy wagon and handcuffs back to the Leon County Jail. So I think Wendy for sure knows she's not going to be able to get away with this. So Katrina, you're asking if I was prosecuting Wendy, would I start with destroying her immunity by proving her perjury? Well, you just bring that parcel to the trial. It's not immunity from prosecution for the underlying offense of murder, right? So it's just for what she testified to, and she never directly implicated herself. And the way she implicated herself, like driving to the crime scene, she'd already testified already. So the state already had that independently from the time she was subpoenaed as a witness. So no, I just bring it all part and parcel and bring it in there. I would say at some point during the trial, I'd probably bring it. Let me think. I might bring it shortly after Detective Isom's interview that I would have that come out. And just so you get a real idea of the way Wendy was flip flopping all over the place. And the jury will already have their mind made up, I would say, after the various excerpts of Isom's interviews brought forward. And then you bring up her different lies in court. I mean, it's going to be an easy one to, I would say, to get a conviction on if you do it the right way. Yeah, Debbie M, this is a great point you made. This is why, this is going to Trescott and then not asking about the kids. That's, points 1A and 1B as the most damning indicators against Wendy. So you're saying here, I cannot get over Wendy and I asked about her children upon learning Dan was shot. Never mind getting on the minivan and asking law enforcement officers on Trescott. Yeah, so I mean, it's like really bizarre, and it's something that a jury see right through it. She's not going to be able to come up with a good excuse for that. Linda Mon, you're asking, how do we know that Robert Adelson's on the witness list? This is the Honorable Adelson, that's a doctor up in the state of New York. And he is on the state's witness list, category A, so he'd be subject to a deposition as well. So hopefully they'll call him this time. And it'd be a huge smart move for them to pull that off. I just hope they have the courage to do that. Sherry D, you're asking, will we ever see a body cam from Charlie's arrest? That's something I think the FBI is holding, that they're not allowing it to be released. So maybe after the trials under Freedom of Information Act, but Florida's not coughing it up because John and I had requested it, and we got just some kind of nonsensical type of answer why they can't release it. So didn't really make any clear explanation. Law and Lit, you're saying, did you see that defense wants Donna's old SunPass info, trying to find an alibi for the outside your house text to Charlie? Yeah, I think they're definitely trying to look for a way to try to diffuse that thing. Because keep in mind, Donna and Harvey drove by Charlie's house and were waiting for him, and Charlie needed to get some money from them to help pay off the hitman through Katie. So that's what it's very clear was going on that Friday night when Professor Markel was gunned down in his garage. So. Okay, somebody else talking about Sarah Boone. Oh, that's the one about the suitcase. Yeah, I heard about that. I thought that one was already going to trial, though. Maybe that's just pretrial motions I had heard about. All right, let's see here. We got gonna jump ahead here to 9:09, so I'm still a half hour behind. Sorry, folks. Van F, you're asking, do I think Dan's potential conflict of interest in representing Charlie increase the chances of Donna's case being dismissed due to some technicality there? Well, he doesn't just have a potential, he does have a conflict of interest, a very ginormous one. The thing is that Donna has waived it, although they didn't go into any details, they didn't go into any kind of query with Donna as to what does she mean that she's voluntarily given this up, the conflict. So does Donna understand the constitutional ramifications of how Rashawn would have to withdraw in the event she wants to cut a deal with the state to maybe implicate other family members, including Charlie, for example? So the knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently waiving that right. If somebody just saying yes, yes, yes 5 or 6 times, whatever it was, that's not sufficient way of waiving that conflict. But so I don't think there's an issue of it being a dismissal ever, I think, is just an issue. Maybe it's going to be retried. So she's not going to win on a technicality that way. So. All right, let's see here. We got, I'm up to 9:14. Let me jump ahead some more. Yeah, I've already covered this. Donna won't have a jury specialist there. I think they wasted their money last time, and I think they're not willing to spend $500,000 or whatever it was. Yeah, you're asking here, rethink CPS, how much litigation in Tallahassee has been delayed due to these many Markel murder cases that fill time. Well, these trials haven't taken that much time, and they should all been trying them many years beforehand. So the I would say there's not much of an effect at all on other cases, nor should they matter unless you have other murder cases. But murder cases generally do get tried in a quicker fashion. And so I just think, like I say, the politics has really gummed this one up. Okay, let's see. I'm not going to talk about Wendy moving. Apparently she has. I'm not really trying to follow that in much detail, where she's at and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Cessna 101, you're asking, can the state use the prison phone calls between Donna and Charlie talking about Wendy? They could use that in Donna's trial, because you got Donna admitting and stuff. I think they may be using that for bringing out the fact that she tried to flee the country. And so it remains to be seen. And I think what's really dicey also is the fact that Rashbaum is mentioned in there. So it's another conflicting type issue for Rashbaum that just is really it's a real head scratcher, I can say, as a longtime criminal defense attorney and prosecutor. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead here to okay, JC, you're asking what level do you suspect they'll charge Donna with? Well, Donna already is charged with the same charge that Charlie was, which include first-degree murder, which carries a sentence of life without parole. So I think if we're talking about Wendy or Harvey, I think it'll be the same charges for all those Florida Adelsons. All right, let's see here. I'm going to do 2 more questions. The 2 you're asking, why haven't they called the lunch ladies testify? A lot of prosecutors and defense attorneys, they just don't go into that level of detail. I would at least interview them. And even if they have interviewed them, I think as a good prosecutor, defense attorney, you go beyond what you see in the written statements. You interview everybody that's been interviewed by the police, no matter which side you're on. And you always come up with more information that's definitely helpful and maybe critical in a case that was never looked at before. So you see that a lot of times cold cases are settled because somebody just forgot to really follow up on some simple task. And so in any case, this is you see it all the time, lack of the granular detail you need to on mannerisms of different parties and what they said or did. And many times you don't have the prosecutors going to the crime scene or defense attorneys going to the crime scene. And it's just it really comes down to who's really a hustler and being tenacious to be a good attorney there. Okay, Doug Farrell, you're asking what explanation could Donna offer as to why she not support her son within her attendance in court. That's not going to be something that comes out in court. So that's not going to be something that jury's going to find out about whether she was there or not. So the jury will notice it if Harvey's not in there, and they're going to notice it if he is in there. And either way, it's going it's going to be really, it's really going to be beneficial for the state either way. Charlie's going to look guilty. The jury's going to be looking at him, and they're going to be wondering, why isn't this guy here at the council table with his wife? Yeah, the Gardner, I did say this earlier. I think that's a good psyop type maneuver to call Charlie down, and it will affect them, I think, in how they present a defense theory. And I think Charlie on deck, ready to be called as a witness, is absolutely terrifying for not only the defense lawyers, but yeah, also for Donna. So, like I say, it's a really good move. Okay, I'm going to ask her one more question, then we'll call it a night. Thanks you guys for following this case. You guys ask a lot of great questions, and the Markells follow this channel as well, and your comments as well. And I know they deeply appreciate your guys' support for their cause. And here's one. Stephen R. Will Georgia be the one cross-examining Donna? I do believe that's going to be the case. I think that that Sarah would be well suited to cross-examine Donna. And if it was my call, I'd have Sarah do it and let Georgia focus on some of the direct evidence for other key witnesses. So sort of like more split out the caseload between the two, divvied up more 50-50. And Sarah has more than proven her weight and capability to do that. So remains to be seen. I'll add one more here. TK, you're asking, is there any interrogation video of Charlie, or did he lawyer up and give no statement? Yeah, he was never interviewed. And just like Harvey and Donna, they were initially asked some questions there at the memorial for Professor Markell, but and they said they'd come back and agree to cooperate and come back into the police station, but then they wound up fleeing the area the following morning, so it never happened. Or I should say, the Monday morning, 2 days later. Yeah. Okay. One more follow up. Carolyn A. The conversation between Katie and her lawyer, where he says Adelsons aren't talking. Okay, that's not Katie's lawyer. That's Sigfredo's lawyer, Jim Lewis, and he is on the witness list. So I think that's really a great maneuver for the state. I think it's going to really rattle the defense team for Donna, and I hope that kind of information comes in. Remains to be seen. It's sort of a rare maneuver, but a smart move by Georgia and Sarah. All right, with that, folks, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for, like I say, for supporting the cause, and we'll be back probably same time next Sunday. So have a great, safe week.